Are you looking at potentially cruising on Harmony of the Seas? And maybe listen to our podcast last week where I randomly just stopped and said, that's part 1. Welcome to part 2. This is the RV Shenanigans podcast. I know what you're thinking. We're still talking about this? Actually, that's what Lauren's thinking.
I was going to say, me too.
And I know we're talking about cruising, but our name is RV Shenanigans. That's the shenanigans portion of it.
Hey, RVers can go on cruises.
They absolutely can. And I didn't think we could talk this much about the ship specifically and our cruise and the time. And I didn't realize how much there was to cover in the ports. And honestly, that should have been a separate show. And so it kind of is in a way.
You're always full of surprises.
You're welcome. So if you haven't checked out our previous episode, we talked a little bit about the ports of call.
No, we talked a lot of it.
We did. Also, I just realized I completely forgot to do our intro. So this is the RV Shenanigans podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Lauren, and together we're Millers in Motion.
And we're uncaffeinated. No, we are very caffeinated. It's just life. So, sorry. Just going to apologize. We honestly didn't think this would be a two-parter, but when I looked down and saw we're at the hour mark and we still were barely halfway through it, we made it a two-parter. So what we just got done talking about on the previous episode was our stateroom and kind of the pros and cons and the different categories on board Harmony of the Seas. But here is the very quick recap in case you just really don't want to go listen to the first episode. Why'd we pick this cruise? Her little sister graduated. This is the rapid fire version, by the way.
Okay.
High school, wanted to go on a trip. We chose this one. We picked the ship and the itinerary and the departure port because of convenience to where we and her mom and little sister were, which was Galveston, Texas. We are on Harmony of the Seas. We went to Roatan, Honduras, Costa Maya, Mexico, Cozumel. Some dolphin places good, some dolphin places bad. I don't like shopping. This is the very quick recap.
I see that.
Some of our clothes smelled moldy after for 6-7 days of sweating in the stateroom.
Thank you, humidity.
Love the stateroom and wish the bed was better.
There you go. It took us an hour to do that last time. Are you kidding me?
And I just did it in like 60 seconds. So at the end of the day, we enjoy cruising. It's a lot. I think RVers like cruising simply because it's so similar in the fact that you kind of, unpack once. Somebody else drives you around, which is the bonus over RVing. Maybe you like driving. I'm not the biggest fan, but
somebody
I do
else also cooks your food. That's kind of nice.
And there's bars.
We are not big drinkers, for the record.
We're not, but it helps if you get seasick. It doesn't. It makes it worse. Anyway, so as we wrap up the stateroom conversation,
yes,
we like the stateroom, but at the end of the day, we wish it still had the ocean view. We had an interior stateroom, or an interior balcony stateroom, which is a little bit weird on Harmony of the Seas. And a lot of the royal ships, you have the two towers, and so we didn't see the value in it, especially since the price categories were reasonably close together.
Right.
I would have much preferred my ocean views.
Me too.
Going on by.
But now we know.
And we do. We're going to spend more money, is what I just heard. So outside of the stateroom, I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the ship because on a 7-day itinerary with 3 ports of call, you have 3 other full days at sea.
Okay.
And to me, those days at sea can kind of make or break a cruise vacation.
And I will say, I think you and I differed in a few points on this as we were talking about it before. But first thing, I thought it was very clean.
What?
The ship. I thought that they were always trying to keep things,
I think the stateroom could have been cleaner.
Yes. But the public
ship
spaces, yes.
Yep.
Like they were always trying to sanitize the handrails on the stairs. They were always, the elevators were never wonky.
You never saw, they were wonky because of the amount of people. But no, and as you walked around and saw things, like you never saw trash piling up anywhere.
No.
Everything, you're right. All the public spaces and out in the hallways and everything was always very clean and well maintained and put together.
And they came through the hallways to pick up, room service trays, things like that.
Right. So there are, as big as this ship is, I almost said was, like it's gone now. As big as this ship is, there's a surprisingly lack of general community space.
There was, and I don't know if that was intentional, that they don't want 7,000 people in the same place at the same time kind of thing.
Well, but I don't even think that there's necessarily about putting them all in the same place, but like we've been on smaller ships that have a lot more dedicated spaces.
Right.
The number of them. So, like, for instance, trivia on a cruise is a really popular thing.
It is. We like it.
So why are they picking one of the smallest venues on the ship to put it in?
And I think some of that goes to the ship design where they have
Right.
the 2 towers, that they actually missed out on several floors of potential space.
And it's about half of the ship. Maybe a little less, but it's close to that size. And so you're right. You do lose that. Now you lose out in interior cabins too. So you technically have less people. Well, no, because there's still the interior balconies. But it's the space between them, which in all fairness, a lot of that ends up being crew service area.
Yeah.
So that they can access parts of the ship. But there are typically other things in there, like lounges can be a little bigger because of it.
Right.
So on Harmony of the Seas, there are, as far as community spaces, you have your entertainment district. I'm working down and up. That's going to be like where your main theater is, which is called Royal Theater. Studio B is there, which is the ice skating theater. There's the Attic, which is kind of the comedy club. It's kind of like the next biggest venue to those other ones, and so forth. So if you go up a level, in fact, there's a stairway right in the middle of it, you get to what's called the Promenade. So the Promenade is kind of the hub of all things for the ship. It's where you enter on embarkation day. It's where you debark the day you're leaving, not necessarily where you get off at ports, because you have to go down further. But it's the hub of everything. So
where
there
the free
are,
pizza is. If you've ever been on a cruise and you're like, where's my midnight free pizza? That's where it is.
Yeah, so that's Sorrento she's talking about. So that's where a lot of the food, there's some food options there. There's bar options there. That's where, if you've ever seen the Royal ships, they have the bionic bar with the robots making drinks, which, spoiler, overpriced and overhyped. We'll get into that in a minute. But so a lot of that stuff's there. A lot of the shops are there, like the Sundry store, which was surprisingly non-existent.
Very small.
So I accidentally forgot my razor. I typically pack everything the night before. We left at if you saw the first video, we left at 5 a.m. And so I wanted to get up, take a shower, and shave on the way out because I knew it was going to be a long day. And we film. I don't want to look better than what I roll out of bed as. Well, I shaved that morning. Well, out of habit, instead of putting my shaver when I was done with it, and I shave in the shower, instead of putting it on the counter as I got out, I put it back on the hanging thing in our shower. And
it was early.
Yeah, and I just completely forgot it. I didn't realize it until second day when I was like, I need to shave. Like, uh-oh, I don't know where my shaver is. And so I went down to a couple of different stores, and they didn't even have them. Finally, a manager overheard me. Like, people just kind of wrote it off, which was a little frustrating. I'm like, I'm going to have a beard by the time this is over. And finally, a manager overheard it, went in the back, saw that they had some, and brought them out because they didn't have any on the shelf. So thank you to that guy. But it's really expensive for really bad razors.
Right.
And so, but there wasn't a lot of that kind of stuff. So if you forget things, I mean, they had plenty of sunscreen, but if you forget a razor, you're kind of SOL.
I forgot hair conditioner. And for all the ladies out there, can you imagine that? I went down and I finally found a bottle of it.
Bad bottle.
It was like Herbal Essences, bright blue. It wasn't ideal,
No
but it was
chemicals at
there.
all.
But the smallest bottle that they had was $16.
And it was like a travel size. It wasn't like...
Well, it wasn't travel size, but it was very small. It wasn't
It wasn't
like
the Costco jug either.
it wasn't like your 4 ounce. It was like a 12-ounce bottle or something like that. But yeah, it was. Yeah,
And that normally costs what in the store?
like
if you-
$5
if you
maybe.
went to Walmart or Target.
Right, $4 or $5, something like
Yeah.
that. So don't forget things, but it was very limited supply.
It was, and so that's kind of part of it. But that area, you're also going to have, like I said, a lot of the shops. Now it's the shops. Like I'm. When you get on cruises, and I'm not meaning to start this version of the part 2 podcast and like,
Oh no,
this is dumb. Why'd they do this? But like, there's always like the watches and the jewelry and all that stuff.
know.
I'm like, you get on a ship, you spent all this money to be like shoved in the face with all of this retail constantly. It's a pet peeve of mine. I just don't like it. I mean, no offense, but I'm not going on vacation to look at Invictus watches.
and maybe somebody is, but that's a lot of dedication.
Right. And so for me, it feels a little in your face, but they have all that. They have the kiosk. It feels a little molly.
Yeah, which I wouldn't have minded if there was some variety.
Yeah.
But it's not like there were T-shirts and hats and knickknacks and things about the cruise ship. There wasn't like a lot of that
Or
necessarily.
things from the ports that
Yeah.
represented those ports themselves, or like the
Right.
culture. Like we're in Mexico a lot. Like, do some things that are brought in from Mexico.
Right.
And have some authentic things in addition to the other stuff. I mean, I'm not saying don't make money on it. By all means, make money on it. That's the point of life for a lot of people. And so that's what makes the wheels go around. We understand. But at least have something that just doesn't have a Royal Caribbean logo. I also have a pet peeve about that. Like, people buy Royal Caribbean stuff and Disney stuff and all that. If you notice, like, I wear event things. Otherwise, it's pretty blank, or it's one of ours or something we're supporting. I have a Masters hat on. I have a Masters shirt on. You have a Masters shirt on. We match.
It was not by intention.
It's always by intention. She's just trying to copy me.
20 years together. You know how you start to look like each other? You start to dress like each other.
She see the logo and she's like, oh, I'll wear that. I'm like, okay. But I don't I don't want to spend $25 on a hat that says Royal Caribbean. Give me the hat. Or
some people like that. They're like, hey, I went on a Royal Caribbean ship. I like this.
I would rather buy something that is authentic to that area. That's also the RV room coming out. I got room for that crap.
Not too.
And so, which is nice because it cuts down on the amount of stuff we buy. But the promenade is the promenade. It's where the parties are in the evenings. They do like dance parties and all that stuff throughout the evenings. A lot of them are there. So moving backwards from the promenade, you move into the boardwalk area. This area is actually pretty cool.
It was a carousel.
This is also where we go from air conditioned and inside to not air conditioned and outside. So full disclaimer, depending on where you are, weather. But this is where Johnny Rockets was. So there were a couple of restaurants out there. Again, we're going to have a whole restaurant section, so I'm not going to go into those at the moment.
Perfect.
There was a carousel. There's a Zoltar is the name of it. So like it's the famous like I would eat your fortune.
Oh yeah,
quarter
that one.
guy, that kind of thing. They had one of those out there. They had like a hot dog place. This is also where the Aqua Theater was, which is probably one of the coolest things I've seen on a cruise ship.
That was really neat.
Yeah. And then you also have the bottom of something called the Abyss. So the Abyss is very, very tall. It's a dry slide. It starts at the very top of the ship, and this is where it comes out. So the exit point is right there. And then you have staterooms. Now, if you go up, so when you went out the back, you kind of go up a level a little bit here. There's some stairs, like grand staircase looking thing at the back of the promenade. That's how you get to the boardwalk. If you go forward from the boardwalk, now you're in one area called Central Park. Which was a cool idea.
Oh, yeah. I really liked that idea.
Right. I hated that they lost everything above it. But I like the idea. So this is also outdoor and open air. But this is where a lot of the higher end restaurants were. So like Jamie's, spoiler, was my favorite restaurant. Chops, which is their famous steakhouse on board. And then the other restaurants were all there. There's a couple of bars, but they actually have living plants in there.
They do, and there were a lot of like photo opportunities,
right.
And the music was different, the vibe was different. I really liked it.
It was just also outside, which in the Caribbean is toasty and humid.
It is, and because of where it's situated, there wasn't a lot of breeze or airflow.
No, unfortunately, not. Yeah, because of the just how it's enclosed on both sides,
right?
And then obviously, the bookends, and then as well as the towers on either side with the rooms. So this is where our room happened to overlooked, and so you could see down into it. If you look straight down, see the last podcast for all that fun. So from there, there's really not. I mean, you move forward. There is another kind of bar entertainment area that we didn't see till like the last night. I don't remember the name of it, to be honest.
I don't either.
It was more of a special event space. I think they used it a lot for like when somebody has a wedding on board and that kind of stuff, and they also double it as one of these other venues.
Okay.
Like they did the karaoke finals there is what we went and saw. We kind of went and heard. Couldn't see it. And then moving all the way up, obviously you're going to have all your outdoor space at the top of the ship. That's going to be your pool decks. So they are pool decks. They sound like that. There's
pools.
3 pools up there, if I recall, and a splash pad.
And the splash pad, yeah.
So they have the kids splash pad. They have the sports pool. So like that one is designed to where they have like volleyball and stuff, and they take over that pool. They have the kind of, I don't know how you describe the other 2 pools. They weren't, one was actually more of a lap pool somehow.
I could never tell them apart. So they were
they had different colored chairs, but they were on different towers. But you could get to them pretty easily. So I think it was more of a which one had more space.
Always.
Or where your group was. So those pools were almost identical. And then moving forward, you have, actually, let's do aft real quick because we're going to spend more time forward. After, you're going to have the sport court area. So that's where a lot of like your table tennis and that kind of stuff was. They had a basketball court that also doubled as pickleball courts. They had their little miniature golf that we never played for some reason.
They had cornhole.
They kind of. They didn't have room for a full-length cornhole, so they had like 10-foot cornhole.
Miniature cornhole.
Right.
And 2 flow riders.
And then 2 flow riders in the back, and then this is also where you would enter the abyss. If you've ever seen some of these ships and they have like that neon-y, weird-looking spike fish thing in the back, that's what that is. And then they had a bar back there. Shocker, there's bars. And then moving all the way forward of the ship on the top deck, you have, what'd they call it? I forgot the name of it. The adults-only area.
The solarium.
The solarium.
Oh, we frequented the solarium.
We did, and I'm realizing how much I'm complaining in this episode of the podcast. So the cons, unfortunately, are outweighing the pros at this current moment in time. I promise it didn't take away from the cruise. This is just things that happened and you should be aware of.
Okay.
So the solarium is adults only, allegedly. And for the most part, it stayed that way because people read signs for the most part.
And we're respectful of that.
Right. Inside there, you have the solarium and then the solarium bistro, which is also adults only.
And it was like buffet food, that sort of thing.
It's essentially the Windjammer buffet sized down because it's not that big of a venue.
Right.
So as far as the overall feel of the solarium, it was actually pretty cool. It's a little unique. It is outside, but they had like these overhang awning thingamajiggers. They held up to the wind. Now, the only downside to them is when you were actually moving, they kind of whistled.
Didn't bother me at all.
It wasn't like a big deal. It just, it does exist though. So if you're like, it's so peacefully quiet, it's not. You have a little kind of at all times. But it's different layers because it kind of tears down to the ship. Directly below this is where the bridge is. So where the bridge wings are, where they stand out when they're docking the ship, you can actually walk on top of those. So that's kind of cool. That is very windy because there's nothing guarding you there. But it's awesome. And there's a little glass section you can look straight down. Yeah. So you actually overhang where like the captain stands when they're docking, depending on which side, and you can see all the way down to the water. Not freaky at all. I would say that they did a great job with hot tubs in here.
Oh, yeah.
Poor job with pools.
We really wish there'd been a pool in the solarium because sometimes you want to be in an adults-only pool.
So I will tell you that there was no pool is what she's saying. So there's no pool up there. They had a mister that was never on.
And there was a shower.
Yeah, well, so
and I get it. But
you're always going to have the showers in these places because of the chlorine and stuff.
That was as close as you got to the pool. Was to stand in the shower.
in the solarium.
Yes.
So what we would typically do is we would go like throughout our day, like we'd kind of get up, have breakfast, do a few things, whatever, you know.
Some of us went to the gym.
Some of us went to the gym. Some of us went for breakfast number 2. And then from there, we'd kind of change and we'd go hang out by the pool. Because if you got there at a reasonable time, you can get a lounger on sea days.
Yeah.
We did it on port days and it was wide open. But on sea days, if you didn't get there by like noon or 1, you were going to struggle to have a...
I'd say like 11.
Okay. We typically were up there by no later than 10.
Yeah.
Because we'd go hang out up there for an hour or 2. And then we'd get in the pool, maybe. We call it people soup sometimes. So depending on how many people were in there, we either did or didn't.
And how often they got out. You know what I mean? If they're not getting out of the pool, there's a problem.
There's bars nearby. Just saying. And so... From there, we would kind of go down and get reasonably cleaned up, have some lunch, that kind of a thing, or grab it up on the pool deck, that kind of a situation.
And it gets hot.
It does. And if we went later, like we did a couple times, we'd go lounge in the solarium instead.
Right.
So why they didn't have a pool in the solarium, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
I that's one of those meetings where I'm just kind of curious, like, why didn't somebody, when they go, I know people like pools, but we're going to not.
We're going to put 16
Misters.
over here. And then nothing over here, like
and misters, and maybe there was an engineering reason that
maybe
they couldn't. But I feel like that's something they should have really tried harder to work around on.
Even if it was small, like I really would have ditched the hot tubs for.
Yeah, well, when you're in a hot environment, it's not like we're in Alaska. Like in Alaska, we'd never use the pools, but we use the crap out of the hot tubs. And so, but here, where it's 95 degrees with 80% humidity,
right?
You know, to be in the cooler water. I will say the best routine we had. I wish we had done it earlier, was go to the solarium and lounge and lay out, but then use the shower to cool off. I like hot tubs because I've got a bad back. And so I went and sat in the hot tub for a little bit, and you would come in occasionally, but you don't last as long as I do.
No, I don't like the hot tub as much.
Right. And then you'd go down and sit out, whereas I don't like to lounge as much because it's a lot of tanning, a lot of tan space. And so... that seemed to actually work pretty good for us, and because normally the pool was so busy, unless it was a port day,
right?
We weren't getting in anyway, and so at least we had the shower to cool off on, because you do get sweaty and hot, and you can overheat very easily too. So
definitely.
Now, let's address the 18 and up situation. So that's a lot
Go
of the public.
for it,
That's a lot
since-
of the public places. So I'm not. I know that there are going to be kids on cruises,
Good for you.
and I say that I didn't process at the time of booking. Like we were like, okay, we want to do it reasonably quickly after Amy's graduation because we want to celebrate her graduation.
Right.
Makes complete sense. What I didn't think through was, wait a minute. If Amy's graduating, all the other schools in Texas are also letting out, and people are going on family vacations with their kids.
Yeah.
And normally the parents are kind of done with their kids by this point because of the school year. And on cruise ships, kids go crazy.
And can we also preface this by saying our Disney cruise had a lot of kids on it?
And I was going to talk about that in a second.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't want to get too far into that. So
Okay.
I'm setting the scene.
Oh boy. All right.
So what are some of our, and I'm saying this knowing full well I'm coming back to the other ships we talked about. We will compare, I'm going to say the kid situation.
Okay.
It's no surprise. We don't have kids. We talked about this in the last episode when we were doing the sloth thing. Like, I don't hold kids. It's not that I don't like kids.
Really? That's a surprise.
I just, I've never been the best with kids.
That's fair.
I've never had a huge desire to have kids. It's just kind of how we choose to live. Luckily, I met somebody that was very much so okay with that. Thank you.
All right. So we don't have kids.
So, when there's an area that's adults only specifically, I feel like that should be reasonably enforced because sometimes you need a break from all the chaos. And I say that kids can on cruise ships, kids can have different levels of chaos.
Right.
There's the older ones that are just kind of turds trying to push the limits, and then there's the younger ones that are just kind of loud and always there.
Right.
And so from when you go in a solarium, you expect it to be kids only. Like there's barriers,
adults only.
or adults only. Sorry, there's barriers. Like they have signs and doors you have to walk through that say 18 and up only. Like you have to walk through a door with a big sign on it. The solarium bistro is the same way. And I almost always saw a kid in any of these areas. And I say like not so when I say kid, 18 and up is considered adult on the cruise ship. And so I'm not talking about the ones that like might have been right around 18. I'm talking about the ones that were clearly 7. And it was better during the day. Breakfast and later in the day got worse. And that drove me nuts because they were kids. And there's nothing wrong with kids being kids, but sometimes adults want to be adults. And I didn't feel like there was any escape.
Just like we wouldn't have been allowed in the children only section.
Correct.
And that would have been enforced. We don't quite understand why it wasn't enforced the other way.
So I'm going to talk about my experience in the bistro, and then we're going to leave the kid thing very alone after
Thank
this.
you.
So one of the mornings we met your mom in the bistro, who was up way before us. And so she was already like eaten, changed, done things, and we roll in for coffee. Lauren was in the gym. And so I go down there to get a plate of food and some coffee. And I'm standing in line at the buffet, kind of waiting behind people, and there's literally young kids in front of me. One of them chose to sneeze and not cover their face. If you haven't been on cruise ships, like norovirus is a thing. Like things spread quicker on cruises. So the fact that someone sneezed openly at a buffet on food, I put my plate down and walked away.
And I'm not saying adults don't do that, but
Effort is probably made to cover your nose, at least in some capacity,
one
or at
would
least
think, yeah.
have some responsibility over it. And I'm not saying that the kid should or shouldn't have, and the parent should have maybe said something. But I remember walking up to I want to say cast member, I know that's not right, an employee.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, is this adults only? And they said, yes. And I turned and looked at the kids and looked back and I said, okay, well, and they said, oh, we understand. That was the response. And I said, okay, well, one of them openly sneezed on the food. So you should probably change out everything from here to here. Like, I'm not eating now because of this. That's gross. Like, I don't want to get sick. Spoiler, I ended up getting sick.
And they didn't. They didn't ask the children to leave. They didn't change out the food or anything. So that was...
And later on in it, the kids started to get restless, as kids do. I understand. I'm not faulting the kids for this. I'm faulting the parents and the employees of that area specifically. Because the parents should have enough responsibility to go, this is 18 and up. Maybe we don't come in here because everybody else is 18 and up and they're trying to not be around kids right now. But it's also less crowded in there, and so people push those rules. And then the fact that I got royally ignored, I didn't mean that on accident, but pun intended now, the fact that I got ignored didn't sit well. And so I'm struggling with rebooking with Royal because of that situation. Now let's talk a little bit about the other cruise ships, and that's why I wanted to say this and saying that we've been on Disney cruises and the kids were better behaved and the employees enforced things.
So the employees enforced things, but I also think that the children had more entertainment options. And so I don't want to say they were sequestered. That doesn't sound very good.
But they were.
But they kind of were, and they loved it. They had so much to do. And I felt like there were less active kids during the day on
the
Disney
cruise. So
yeah, because they had their own things to go do.
Well, and so here's some of the big differences just quickly about the ships are no casinos on Disney cruise ships, big casinos on Royal. Royal is definitely geared towards adults, and they happen to have kid programming. Disney is geared towards kids that happens to have adult programming. So with that being said, if you're not a fan of Disney, I can't guarantee you're going to love a Disney cruise.
Sure.
It's just in your face. It's no avoiding it. With the programming that Disney offers to kids, because there's no, I almost want to say cruise ship, casino, there's very large kids clubs. They put a lot of effort into all the way down to infants up to whatever the teen clubs are and then adult,
18.
right until they hit 18. And even then there's groups where the 18 to 20-year-olds have that it's a little bit more do the adult things, but they kind of get together. So they don't have a dedicated space, but they have their little groups. I think Disney does such a phenomenal job at their programming, and in addition to their programming, wearing them out.
Facts.
That even though that kids are around, they seem to be better behaved. And I do not mean to make the analogy of kids are like dogs. But we've always said, like when we were working with dogs in an RV, like a tired dog is a good dog. Like if they're getting their exercise and their brains are entertained, they behave better. They sleep. That's why our dogs are passed out over here. And so kids are kind of the same way.
And they're both dreaming. They both got their little feet going.
Yeah, I say that.
It's
I don't
pretty
know if
cute.
Mishka's ears flipping around. Okay, I thought she was listening to us. But kids are kind of the same way. If you stimulate them enough and their brains are going and they're doing things, they become tired.
Right. When they're bored, that's a little bit of a problem because the parents want to relax too.
Bored with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And then you let these slightly older ones where you're comfortable letting them go. Now they have no supervision and chaos is raining down.
Yeah.
And so I get that that's part of cruising, but what I don't get is why it wasn't enforced in the adults only area, where now all the adults don't essentially have that escape. And I am holding it against Royal specifically, not necessarily the kids, because it's not their fault there wasn't programming.
Right.
And so we had a better kid experience on Disney, which is a kid-centered.
So, but let's also talk about timing because our Disney cruise was like, I think the second week of December. We were back by the 16th, I want to say.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Right before like winter break.
I'm not sure that everybody was out for break yet.
And they might not have, but there were kids around.
There were plenty of kids around. And yes, I agree with you. And then the Norwegian ship was an Alaskan cruise, and I don't think that's a very kid-centered itinerary.
I do agree with that. And that's why I did make the analogy initially to NCL is because I do think the time we went, it wasn't summer break yet.
For Norwegian?
Yeah.
It was.
Oh, was it? Then it just started then.
It was June, just like this one was. It was almost the exact same dates.
So Alaska cruises are inherently more expensive. Any cruises that port inside the U.S. and stay inside the U.S., their taxes are quite a bit higher. That's just how it is. That's why Hawaii cruises are so expensive.
Yeah, but a lot of them will port in Canada too.
They do. The one we were on did not.
Yeah, it did.
No, well, I'm sorry. It did port in Canada, but it's closed and has ports in the U.S., so they pay more per tax. So they discounted by one versus starting in Vancouver and then coming back to Vancouver. That would have been cheaper. So because of that, though, I think Alaskan cruises as a whole, it's just there are less kids.
There are. The itinerary is different. The expense is different.
Because they're inherently more expensive, the cruises as a whole, it's less likely you're going to take a family of 5 or 4 on something like that.
So several factors, but the experience was what it was.
Right. But I will say, like Norwegian, the kids never became such a thing that I felt like I needed a kids or an adults only area. They existed, but I didn't feel like I needed it.
Right.
On Disney, they had an adults only area and they legitimately enforced it. Like there were times that they didn't mind kids walking through the area to get from point A to point B, but they weren't allowed in some of the venues at all. And then at a certain time they couldn't even walk through the area anymore. And again, you're having to walk through barriers, and there's I say that there's a couple of restaurants that are adults only up there. There are bars and entertainment venues, and then there's also what would be the Solarium on Royal. I think they call it Quiet Cove, and there's a pool and a coffee shop and all that. They're never allowed in those areas, and they enforce it. And so my biggest complaint is that it just wasn't enforced. So,
and that is Ryan's soapbox for today. Oh,
I
you're
think
not
that's the
done.
second one.
Yeah.
No, I was just trying to count soapboxes.
Like, oh dear goodness,
I
you're
don't
not
remember
done.
where we broke the episode, so it could have been the last episode. But anyway, so that's my disclaimer. In retrospect, if we were booking the cruise just us, I would have probably thought through the timing a little bit better and booked it at a because we have the freedom of scheduling vacation whenever we want. We're not subject to a school schedule like a kid is.
We are subject to a hurricane schedule, so we would have also made sure that we were out of hurricane season because this was technically within it.
It was, but on the early side, so we weren't as concerned about it. At the time of recording, now there's, I don't remember, it starts with a B.
Barrel.
Oh, it's a bad name.
What a name.
Hurricane. But that's affecting things. So, like, I know cruises, and they don't cancel a cruise because of hurricane. Well, they can. It's rare. But you just change your itinerary drastically.
It's probably less ideal, too.
It is. So, anyway, that's just, if you're taking that into consideration, if you're not the biggest kid person and you're looking for an adults-only cruise, maybe look at adult-only cruises like Virgin, or look at a timing where school's in session or less likely that families are vacationing and it's more people that can or older kids that have that flexibility like they're in college or something because typically they're a little calmer.
And if you're willing to go Disney, like I say, we had a great time on that and didn't think that was an issue at all.
And that can be a whole other topic in itself that we're not going to get into. But yes, if you're a fan of Disney cruises are actually quite a bit of fun and they are not overly kiddie if you do them the right way. So, okay. So that's kind of our public areas / kid tangent. So with that being said, kids sneezed on food. Where can I go to avoid that? Apparently nowhere. But
room service.
That's true. Kids won't. Well, there's no guarantee on the hallway there they won't sneeze on it.
But it's covered.
So let's talk a little bit about the food on board.
All right. So this was a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yes,
First of all, there's free ice cream. A cruise ship without free ice cream does not count in my book. We're not going on that boat.
You're not a cruise ship. You're just a boat now.
You're just a boat. You've been downgraded.
That's the line.
So yes, there is free ice cream. They had an attendant. For better or for worse, at least the kids weren't playing in the ice cream, but I also couldn't, make a large ice cream the way that I would like to.
Like on the Disney cruise where
Like
you put
on
it in
the
a
Disney.
huge cup and
I
just
know.
wander off.
So that was a good thing. We never did the regular dining, the main dining on this ship.
Like I said in the last podcast, if you listen to it, we are fans of better food quality. We are very much so in the mentality, I know, contrary to popular visual belief.
And this is, he says I just get lumped in. I follow him.
I will say that I'm a fan of things having flavor, and sometimes buffets, while over people-y, don't necessarily have the highest food quality just because they're pushing so much through. It's just how it works.
Yeah. No surprises there.
We did book what's called the ultimate dining package. So we were given specialty. Bless you, Bailey. Yes, the mic picked that up. Again. They're awake.
The dog is sneezing.
The ultimate dining allowed us a specialty dining every evening plus lunches on at sea days. So we had 3 lunches essentially that we could do specialty dining at. Yeah. So that's what we were on there. We didn't have a need to go to the main dining room. I kind of wish we would have at least once just to compare.
I know.
But at the same time too, I wasn't going to waste the money either.
No,
so
he wasn't because I brought that up.
we should have gone for a snack. Like lunch 1 could have been light somewhere, which nothing was light, by the way.
Lunch 1. Oh dear.
Early dinner and then like tapas after that or something.
Anyway,
so now we're taking the information we have from the main dining room from
Mom and Amy,
mom and little sister, which
they enjoyed it every time they went. They
yeah, and I will say like my palate seems to be drastically different than theirs too, though. So I don't know that's. We're just going to repeat what they said to us. And then it's up to you to figure it out for your own.
That's right. They said it was great. They didn't have, they said it probably wasn't up to snuff with the specialty dining, which you would expect. But they enjoyed their time and they enjoyed their food.
And it's probably pretty clear to say there are certain dining establishments on any cruise ship that are included in your cruise fare. I know people say it's the free one. Sure. You paid for it. You just don't realize you paid for it.
Right.
So, and then there's upgraded dining experiences. Cruise ships like Disney only have 1, maybe 2 options for those upgraded dining experiences because they elevate their main dining room to a certain level. most regular cruise ships, like Royal, NCL, or Norwegian, all the main ones have what's included, and then they have upgraded options. One of my complaints of cruising is they kind of nickel and dime you once you book your fare.
It's true.
And this is one of those things. So our drink packages, we didn't have one of those, like we said before. So included in your main dining or your regular dining is going to be a handful of quick options. The pizza place Lauren talked about earlier, Sorrento's. The hot dog place on the boardwalk was actually included.
Yep.
The main dining room is always included.
There was that Small Bites that had like the quesadillas and stuff.
So there's like the Windjammer Cafe is their big like buffet. It takes up like a quarter of the ship in the front. And then there's a few little food stations, like Small Bites. They had like quesadillas and a couple of tacos and that kind of stuff. Like quick stuff, that's more poolside grub kind of a thing. When we talk about upgraded experiences, whether you do a package or pay what we call a la carte, almost all the restaurants have a flat fee, which means just like the main dining room, if you see 2 entrees you really like, you can get them if you so choose and have the room for them. More importantly, if you see like 3 desserts.
More likely.
There's ice cream and cake. Put them on one plate. Bring them out. So when you do upgraded, it's typically like, for instance, you'll spend Johnny Rockets as an example was an upgraded. I think it was $14.99 a person. So you're paying that in addition to what you've already paid into, and you now order whatever you want on the menu. Shakes were an upgrade in addition to that.
Right.
So same thing with the main dining. Like if you went to Chops, I think it was $49.99 a person. But again, it's one of those situations like I really like steak, and I didn't necessarily care for sides, and so they literally brought me 2 filet mignons. So
you would have gotten your money's worth if we'd had to pay the a la carte fee for that.
And so it is one of those situations that are like that. Now there is one restaurant, 150 Park Fair, that does not do that. If you're on a dining plan, you have a prefix menu that you pick from. If you don't have a dining plan, making sure the dog doesn't lay on the tripod.
Mishka's still fighting the tripod being in her napping place.
From episode 1. And that one is if you go in there without a dining plan, you don't have a choice on the a la carte. You're just ordering a la carte. So that's the only restaurant, at least on this ship, that had that. So that's the differences in the dining. Now the question is, was it worth it or not? And I'm talking about the restaurants, and I don't necessarily think we should go through all of them, but let's hit our highs and lows, because we didn't go to every single one of them.
So to answer your question, yes, I thought the specialty dining upgrade cost was absolutely worth it on this ship.
To the best of our knowledge. Because obviously we didn't try the main dining room, but based on what your mom and little sister said, is I think that they probably did a better job than our Norwegian experience. I'm not comparing this to Disney because Disney's a little different when it comes to food.
Exactly. But compared to the
Norwegian's pretty comparable.
They are, yeah.
I was disappointed in the main dining room.
At Norwegian.
And that forced us to do more in the moment of on specialty dining on
right.
Now, I'm not saying we couldn't eat in there. I'm just saying when you're on vacation and a steak comes out kind of lukewarm and there's not a lot of flavor, does it get the job done? Yeah. Is it great? No. And so we avoided that this time. Now, my favorite restaurant was Jamie's. So it's an Italian restaurant.
Jamie Oliver, the chef.
Yep. So he's got a lot of the cruise lines are working with celebrity chefs now. That happens to be one of theirs. And it is a kind of rustic Italian kind of a thing, kind of simple, but also tons of flavor.
It was very good.
And no joke, some of the best lasagna I've ever had. And then that dang cheese board thing. And then your brownie. But
yes. Yeah. And so the desserts were good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well worth it, but I can say it wasn't necessarily my favorite.
Even though we ate there 3 times. 2 dinners and a lunch.
Well, we'd already decided we were going to have 2 dinners there because you really enjoyed it.
Right.
And then the lunch was just happened to be...
Get our money's worth.
Yeah, that one. They had a good burger and some good options in that regard.
They did. And they did have a couple of extra things for lunch that they don't normally have at dinner, like a burger and that kind of stuff. So what was your favorite? My
favorite was probably Chops.
Which is their steakhouse.
Yeah, their steakhouse. And so the first round, it was good. It was a step above what I would imagine the main dining was, but it wasn't quite up there. But then the second time we went back, it was really good.
Yeah.
And so I liked the steak, I liked the sides, and I liked the desserts.
So I will say that I like the steak. Chops has been known as like the best steakhouse at sea. We are from Texas.
And he makes a dang good steak at home.
So
like
we're
legitimately.
very spoiled by that. And if you don't watch the videos and you don't know from the RVing stuff on Miller's and Motions YouTube channel, I cook a lot. I like to cook, especially grill. If you've been around any of that stuff, you've probably seen a brisket video come out. We have a shirt that says brisket. So, but I am a big fan of cooking, especially anything like with open fire and outside. So I've perfected, in my opinion, a good steak, and that is a lot of it the quality of the meat. I mean, some of it is preparation, but it's kind of a 50-50 thing.
Right.
And I feel like the quality of beef was okay. It wasn't amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a step above.
It was. It wasn't like going to the buffet and going like, ooh, a strip steak.
Right.
No, that's leather.
It was a filet, and it was good.
It was. You can tell sometimes, well, so for me, chops was inconsistent. Like,
Yeah, it was.
I didn't like, again, I had 2 steaks the first night because I like meat. So I don't necessarily have to have a ton of flavor. I prefer it. I still liked it. The second time around, the steak was drastically better.
It was.
It was also cooked like just my temperature. So I get things medium a lot. And the first time around, I was overcooked on both of them.
Yeah.
Which means that whoever was happened to be cooking the steaks that night just overcooked stuff. The next time we went, it was spot on.
Right.
The flavor was better. So whoever that second chef was on it.
Yeah.
What was I mean, like, what is that? You just like everything?
I did. No, I liked the salad I got. I liked the sides. I liked the steak. I liked the desserts. I was happy.
So these were our 2 favorite restaurants across the board. I would agree. Like, she'd probably say Jamie's was her second favorite.
All right. No hate here. All right. I love Johnny Rockets.
Okay, but that's not really a dinner special.
to
Like,
me
it was
it is.
specialty, but it wasn't like of the upscale stuff. Let's say that then.
Yes.
So Johnny Rockets is a specialty, but it's not quite the same. Like, if you go to Johnny Rockets for dinner versus Chops, you're not getting your money's worth. I will tell you that.
But I am also not a foodie, and I'm not going to have the big portions necessarily. And so I don't know.
Okay.
I like Johnny
If
Rockets.
I said sit down restaurants that aren't a burger place,
Oh, sad day.
would Jamie's be your second? Johnny's Rockets to me is not a dinner place; it's a lunch place.
I'm not sure if I enjoyed Jamie's, but I'm not terribly keen on a whole lot of pasta, and some of those other things.
Okay.
So I don't know if it would be hibachi actually.
Oh, I forgot about hibachi. That was really good.
The hibachi was really good.
So here's a disclaimer. They probably have the best hibachi place at sea. I would argue it's one
Yeah.
of the best ones we've been to anywhere.
I do agree with that.
And so it actually comes, even with specialty dining, it comes with an extra surcharge on top of that.
Right.
So I looked this up the other day because I was curious, because we paid an extra $15, so $14.99, I believe, per person on top of our specialty dining fee that we already paid. If you were going without a dining package, $74.99.
Okay. But in my opinion, like, that was worth it. You got a lot of food.
Yeah.
It was high quality food. There was entertainment.
The chef was really good.
The chef was really good. I got all excited because when he chopped up the onion, I thought we were going to have our little volcano thing, and I was ready for it and had the camera ready. And there's no fire on cruise ships like that.
Yeah, she was doing. I looked at her and I go, "What are you doing?" She's like, "The flame." I go,
Flame, the
"I
volcano."
don't think they do that. Like, there's this whole up in flames situation on a boat. It's not like we're in a restaurant that you can just go grab something and put it out easily. I mean, you could, but
It was just
still,
funny.
I'm sure there's a regulation against massive open flames.
Yeah, I'm
Also,
sure.
the ceilings are quite a bit shorter. So
I'm sure the show was, amended for the
right.
ship.
So you just got the choo choo part, not
I
the
just got the choo-choo part, yes.
no volcano, just train.
That's right.
But yeah, it was very good. So I would actually say that that's probably my second favorite. I'm a fan of Asian food to begin with. You are a little more hit and miss with it, but you like hibachi.
I do like hibachi.
So I would go, for me, I'd go Jamie's, hibachi, chops. And you would go chops, hibachi, Jamie's.
Yes.
With a weird
I was
burger
going to
caveat
say,
somewhere in the middle
with
there.
Johnny Rockets tying for third.
So with that, there are a few restaurants we did not go to. We did not go to 150 Park Fair. So it's very much so a French-inspired restaurant. There just wasn't a lot. So we're not big seafood eaters. We are dabbling. And we're dipping our toe very slightly and cautiously into the very shallow end.
The menu just wasn't to our liking, to our preferences.
So we just never went there. And simply because, and that's the beauty of a cruise, do and don't do the things you want or not want to do.
That's right. And so we hear wonderful things out of that restaurant, but it just wasn't quite for us.
If you're into seafood, you'll probably love it. And then we didn't do vintages either.
Right, the wine place.
It was wine and more of like a tapas style menu. Nothing against it. The hours were kind of weird on it, and we just because it was tapas and we were doing more of a traditional dinner. It didn't open in time for us most of the time. We like to eat between 5 and 6.
A little on the early side for sure.
Because we want to move on. Plus, I don't like to go to bed super full.
Right.
And so we eat early for people. I know that we eat early.
And if you haven't been on a cruise ship, if you go to dinner, you generally leave very, very full.
Very full.
And so just understand it's more than like a normal dinner full.
Right. And so we just never went there simply because we just didn't go there.
Yeah.
There was a Mexican food place.
There was, and that does not make
Sabor.
the list.
Well, it makes a list.
Does not make the best list.
So I would say like this is one of those ones that and it depends on your favorite palate.
It does.
I don't think it was necessarily bad food. We're from Texas again. And so we have Tex-Mex. And this is very much so Tex-Mex. It's not Mexican food.
Right.
There's a very big misconception that Tex-Mex is Mexican.
No,
it's not. In fact,
it's not.
If you go to Mexico, hardly any of that stuff is on a menu anywhere.
Right. So
Enchiladas aren't really a thing down there. I mean, they are, but not like that. And so we went because we like queso. We like that stuff. We love good Mexican food and a margarita. Heck yeah.
we saw the menu and said, hey, those are things we like.
Yeah. I should have been red flagged by like beef patty empanadas and some certain things like that are not really Mexican, but they're on a Mexican menu.
Yeah.
An empanada is not a Mexican thing. It's South American. So
It was the only restaurant I would put on the least best list.
I would say unless if you don't like spicy food, but you like the idea of Mexican, you might love it.
You might like that, yeah.
It did not have enough flavor for us.
Correct.
And it's not necessarily a knock on the quality of the food.
No.
I thought the meats were of a good enough quality for what they were being cooked at, and all those things. They just didn't have the flavor I was expecting.
I don't think we were alone in that because it was never crowded.
No, and arguably what we should have done is made it at one of our lunch spots, and then substituted something we really liked in for dinner,
Or even tried the main dining room.
or that. So. Again, Sabor could use some improvement on the food side.
From our perspective.
If you're going to do a specialty dining package, definitely check it out for lunch because you can recover from that. If you don't like it, just stop eating and go somewhere else. We did it for dinner and one of our specialty dinners, unfortunately. I think we should have noted something when it was the lesser of all the upcharges. Johnny Rockets was less, but not much. And it's literally just burgers and fries there.
Right.
So now that being said, Johnny Rockets, we'll get into your favorite. One of your favorites.
I think also it's well done, but I like that style of food. I like a BLT or a burger and fries and shake and onion rings and stuff. And there's just, I think that's my dad's influence on me, that was something he loved.
And I do too, just not necessarily in that setting for dinner. And
Good
I
for
think
you.
That's why. But I went there twice for lunch. So we had one unique thing. The last day for lunch, what did you do at Sadie for lunch? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
You did something. Because I remember coming back like, well, I'm hungry for lunch. And you weren't for some reason.
Yeah.
Either you just weren't hungry anymore. And I went down to go get something at the pizza place. And the line, I don't know what, it was so funny. There'd be the most long lines at the most random times.
It was bizarre.
And then dead others. And the pizza's okay. It got better as you went. If they didn't have a gazillion people and they weren't rushing, they weren't bad.
Yeah.
I went down to get a couple of slices of pizza and come back up to the room. And literally the line was around, no, I'm not standing in that line. The pizza's not good enough.
No, it wasn't worth that.
And then I realized I still had a specialty lunch. It was 1:00 in the afternoon, and we were going to dinner at 5:30 or 6. It's I'm just going to go. I don't know if any of these restaurants do a takeaway thing.
I
so
remembered what it was that I ate at the Solarium Bistro, and you didn't get enough to eat there. There weren't enough options for you.
Oh, that's right. They went heavy on the fish that day for some reason, and so I got a couple things, and it wasn't. So I went and I got a burger and fries, and I brought it back to the room, which you ended up eating. You got half my fries.
They did. Not a bad day for Lauren.
And that works. And so I love Johnny Rockets. They do nickel and dime you, so it's $15 surcharge on top of anything for specialty. I think it was $30 if you didn't have a specialty dining. I can't remember what your mom and Amy paid.
Don't hold us to that.
Yeah, I thought it was $15. Maybe it was 15. I don't remember. No, it was $15 a person, but we got it included on lunch for specialty.
Right.
That's what it was. And then the milkshakes were $4 or so, $5, something like that. And so, again, it's a burger, so it's good. I wouldn't do it for dinner, but lunch was really solid. The burger was great. The chocolate shake was great. It was exactly what you wanted it to be, essentially.
For the record, you can take that to go if you would
you can.
rather eat somewhere else at your room or whatever it is.
Which is what I did. Room service.
We didn't eat much in the room service category.
We didn't. So little disclaimer, there is a fee with room service, most of it. So I believe it was $6.99 or $7.99. Excuse me. And so you could order as much as you want off of that, just like you could in the restaurants. But we never did that. Now, in the mornings, they offer a complimentary hang this on your room. And it's like a complimentary continental breakfast kind of stuff. So fruit, pastries, coffee, that kind of stuff. We did it 2 mornings of the 6 or 7. And we did exactly that. We ordered a carafe of coffee and then like some pastries and some fruit. It was okay. I wouldn't we stopped doing the food portion of it. The pastries where you could tell they cooked them days prior and they were sitting in a refrigerator. And so you'd open them and they'd be like the donuts had that weird, you go to a good donut shop, it's crispy and everything's fresh. If you go buy donuts at Walmart, they always have that weird dew on them. That's kind of how it was. And there wasn't enough flavor to warrant the calories essentially.
Yeah. But if you needed something to tide you over, then I guess it worked.
The coffee side of it was great.
The coffee was good.
The one complaint I had with our room attendant was we never got any more of those. So we did 2 of them, and you only had 2 to start with. They never came back. So I'm sure he would have given us more if we had asked, but I don't feel like that's something I should have had to ask for.
Yeah.
If there's ever not 2, just put another one down. It's not that hard.
Right.
So from that perspective, yeah, we never did the full-on room service. I guess we should have tried it at some point, but
I'm okay. I don't think we missed out.
Late night snack. I'm guessing it's main dining room food.
Yes.
With transit time.
Exactly. That's why I say I don't think we missed out.
As far as any other food, we never tried the hot dog house.
No, because I don't really eat hot dogs.
So at Quick Bites, they had mini hot dogs. I tried it. It wasn't very good. And so I was like, well, if it's just a bigger version of that, I don't really want that. And you don't like hot dogs. I'm trying to think what else is around there.
So this isn't dining necessarily, but this is related to dining. That if you didn't have a soda package, it was actually really hard to find free water. Just find a dispensing thing with water, because
I still didn't see a dispensing thing with water unless you had a drink package. You had to go to a bar and order one.
I was going to say you could order a water at the bar.
And you have to say tap water, by the way.
Yes. You could go to the buffets, the Solarium Bistro or the Windjammer, or you could go to the pizza place. Those were the only places that I found that you could get a glass of water to take away. And they were kind of small glasses. And so
no, not kind of. They were very small.
And so that was an issue. I really wish that I could have just had water.
Which is surprising because, and we made the joke on the cruise a couple of times, it's they'd rather get you drunk than keep you hydrated.
Right. You could find soda pretty easily. But yeah, they would rather get you drunk than give you water.
So and that was a little frustrating in the sense that, and I will say that this is something that, thinking back to Norwegian, Disney includes sodas and waters, and so they don't care.
Right.
So there's water things everywhere. There's dispensers everywhere. You can walk up to anything and you can buy a bottle of water, but they're going to start with the tap water if that's what you have. If you ask for water, they're going to give it to you.
Exactly.
And if you say, I'd rather have a Dasani or whatever their bottle that they happen to have, then they'll charge you for it.
Right.
On Norwegian, I didn't feel like it was an issue getting water.
I don't remember it being an issue at all.
And I will say, when I say that they're strict on water and sodas and stuff, it's typically, even on NCL, if we sat down for dinner, we could order a soda.
Could we?
I thought so.
I don't remember that because
we had the drink package for starters, so we typically ordered a drink. But
exactly, and I don't really drink much soda.
Maybe it was included in that.
I think that's what it was. Okay. I think it was included in the drink package.
If we sat down, if you didn't order specifically tap water or a cocktail that we paid for or had a thing for, you weren't getting a soda. And their alcohol packages do not necessarily include soda.
Right.
Which is weird because it's cheaper than alcohol is. So, it was unique. But again, that's that whole nickel and dime thing where I start to get a little annoyed by it. And Norwegian's guilty of this too.
Yeah, they were.
Most of the cruise lines, Disney being the exception of that, because they include all that stuff in your deal, but they also don't have drink packages because they're trying to avoid people getting overly intoxicated.
Or at least they didn't last time we were on a boat.
They still don't. Okay. I was looking them up. Now, you can buy they have a beer club thing where you can buy a mug and they give you a token and you come back and you're paying less for the beer over time, but it's just beer.
Yeah.
And so, and then they have drinks of the days, but that's it. So this place has drinks of the days, I think.
Yeah, they did.
Did they? Okay. but the drink prices were pretty up there. I mean, the average was about $14.
I was going to say about $14 regardless. Yeah.
So, overall, the food quality was good in the specialty. It's probably right where you would expect it to be.
Yeah.
Some of the specialty dining might not have been up to par, like the steakhouse. While good, don't get in your head that it's a really high end steakhouse like a Del Frisco's
that you
or
find
Ruth's
online,
Chris, right?
On land. Sorry.
Yeah, and especially like in Texas, where good steakhouses are a dime a dozen, or like a Chicago steakhouse, like what's
Ruth's
the one
Chris.
we went to? Well, that's New Orleans, but
Ruth's Chris is up there too, though.
they have them up there, but that's not where. Oh, Ruth Chris. I'm sorry. What was I thinking of?
I have no idea. You're crazy, man.
I know. So again, you're going to get nickel and dime. So just if you're looking at booking it and food and drinks are a thing, just start budgeting in the packages with that.
Yeah, understand what you're getting into.
Right. Because otherwise you're going to, like, we didn't do that on our Norwegian, felt nickel and dime, did a little better job of that on on Royal, I mean.
We did.
Still felt a little nickel and dime, but not as bad.
Right.
So from there, because what goes better with food than entertainment?
So I think I was more impressed with the entertainment
I agree.
on Royal than I was on Norwegian.
Drastically, actually.
Yes. And so I felt like there was always something. They were in different areas, so you kind of always had to be moving around, but
Right.
there were trivias and different things.
So there's different layers to entertainment. Let's start by saying there's like the Broadway style shows, like the full on production stuff, whether it be an ice skating show or a stage production. So we're going to call those like overproduced or very highly produced shows.
Yeah, the produced ones.
Then you have like other things throughout the day, like dance parties and belly flop contests. And it's not necessarily like it's produced, but not over the top.
We got production and entertainment. How about that?
Yeah, well, and then you even have that, like, I wouldn't consider, like, trivia is entertainment, but it's hardly produced at all.
Yeah.
And so then you have, like, games and those types of things. I would say that the trivia stuff could have gone a lot better. Not just based on location they chose to do them in, because they always picked a venue that was too small.
So, but I still thought that, like, that stuff was probably better than it was on Norwegian, but it wasn't as good as it was on Disney.
Oh, see, I disagree.
Okay.
So I would say the games were Disney's going to be hard to beat in this category.
Yeah.
You just have to be okay with what the intellectual properties are that are being used. It's Disney themed.
Yep.
So if you're not a Disney person, then it doesn't really matter. I wouldn't go on a Disney cruise if I wasn't a Disney person, just to start with.
Okay.
So I'm taking Disney out of this conversation because it's so different.
Oh, sad day.
That's fine. Well, that's a good thing. They're in their own little category above everybody else over there in the corners, just doing their Disney thing.
All right.
On Royal, like the trivia stuff, Royal versus Norwegian, I thought Norwegian did a much better job.
Okay.
It seemed well put together. Like all their crap actually worked. And like the people doing it understood the questions being asked.
Okay. I'll give you that.
So like on Royal, like laptops wouldn't work. And then we'd be sitting there for 5 minutes with no update.
But I thought there was more variety on Royal.
There may have been. We also, because of Alaska, we spent a lot of time in areas where you didn't get ship announcements and you didn't necessarily do some of those things. So I just thought when we did do them, regardless of how many there were, the options, that they were done better on NCL.
Okay.
Norwegian, or not Norwegian, Royal seemed to struggle a little bit more with that.
All right.
To get somewhere with trivia or like karaoke or those types of things, if you didn't get there 20 or 30 minutes early, you were not getting a seat.
No, there were even people sitting on the floor and there was still no room.
We were some of them.
So.
And so that's why I say, like, whereas when you do the trivia with NCL, there was plenty of areas to sit. Like, we never really had that issue.
No,
I mean,
we
had to
didn't.
look a little bit, but we'd find somewhere.
Okay.
Now, when you get up into more of the stage show stuff, I thought NCL fell really flat on that.
Absolutely.
And Royal did a very good job of it.
Phenomenal. There was ice skating, there was the aqua theater, there were the, Broadway style productions, and I don't have a single complaint. In fact, raving reviews.
Like the popular game shows they did in the theater, they understood, like the marriage game and that stuff. Those were done well. Even though they weren't overly produced, they were still done very well, that they actually had people with camera operators. And so if you weren't super close, you could still see on the Jumbotron kind of things with the screens. They actually recorded it and played it back on your stateroom, that kind of stuff. So that's why I say, like, it depends on which version you're talking about. Because I thought NCL did the entry-level, smaller stuff better. But I feel like, like Jersey Boys was on our Alaskan cruise.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, like, on land. Phenomenal on land.
Yeah, it was.
we about a quarter way through, like, this isn't very good.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do. And then on this one, there was, we did 2 shows, didn't we?
Grease.
I remember that one.
I don't remember what the other one was.
What was the game show? I didn't know if there was a third.
There was. I don't remember what it was, though.
Oh, Columbus the musical. We didn't go see that. So that was more of like, what I got the gist was, think Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but Christopher Columbus comes to the U.S. Monty Python style, is what my best guess was. We didn't go see it. Timing just didn't work out, and then reservations were gone by the time we tried to get there.
Yeah.
Did we do comedy on NCL?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm skipping around a little bit. Grease was done really well. I'm not a big Grease fan. I don't care for the musical.
Right.
I didn't care for the movie. That's
not what we're talking about. We're talking about how well it was done.
No, right. And that's what I'm saying. That's not a knock on them. I thought it was done about as good as you could have done it on a ship, and they were in a cast change.
Yes.
So it was a brand new cast. It's the second time they've ever performed it on the cruise ship. So the fact that they did so well, not necessarily being as familiar with their surroundings, they practice out the rear end, I'm sure.
I think we literally caught the second show on the ship.
For them. I mean, obviously they've been doing that show for a while, but it was a different cast.
That's why I say on the ship, that cast.
So I don't care for Grease, and I thought it was done really well. And then like the game show was done really well.
Yeah.
Even though that was just simple and the cruise director talking. When it came to the other stuff, I thought the most unique show, and actually my favorite show, was the Thin Line.
Fine Line. It was their Aqua Theater show.
So there's 2 Aqua Theater shows that are in addition to. I will say that because Royal spent more on venues, because NCL only had like the one theater. And then they kind of had like the meeting trivia, also could do small productions there.
It was limited on NCL.
They only could do so many. Whereas this place, they had the main theater, which was huge, by the way.
Huge.
Then they had Studio B, which was the ice skating rink. They could make the ice go away and turn it into something else, which they did a couple times. And then they had the Aqua Theater, too. So they really had 3 large-ish theaters.
I was going to say large venues.
I think the Aqua Theater was actually bigger than Studio B, just the amount of people it could sit.
Okay.
But because of that, they had more ability to have more shows. Now, that's just a design flaw in NCL. If they wanted more shows, they should have put more venues. But I thought the Fine Line was really cool because it was unique. You know, it's not something you see. And
exactly.
If you've never seen it, the Aqua Theater is Aqua Theater. I don't know how else to say that. It's a pool, but there's platforms that go up and down in the pool, and they can do certain sides and like a catwalk, or they can all go down. And there are people diving into this pool, which is not very big.
No.
From 5, 6 decks up.
The accuracy required for what they do?
Right.
No, thank you.
And they do 2 shows. The Fine Line is their main one. So that's in the evening. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that one was great.
I understand if you were a younger kid how it could freak you out a little bit. It's very high energy. There are some dark moments, not like people getting killed or anything.
No, gosh, no.
But they're like, they have face paint on. It's very dark. There's a guy with like the fire thingy-majigger.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's a little more raw of a show, and it's a whole lot of very nostalgic music kind of mashed up together with these really kind of cool visuals.
Okay.
Lights, black lights, that kind of stuff. The other one was done during the day. FYI, the Aqua Theater in the day in the Caribbean is much hotter. I don't think that one was worth sitting through.
Oh, I disagree. I liked that one.
So that was...
I like the entertainment.
What was the name of that? It was like that Palm Beach style...
I don't remember.
Like beach party kind of a thing. And it ended up being like a whodunit caper somehow. And it was very cheesy.
It was, but
intentionally. And not in a bad way. Just that's how it was. Kind of like me in the videos.
I was going to say, it's entertaining.
Right. So. We were rocking pretty good at that moment. So they had to stop the show for about 20 minutes because they had to adjust course so that the pool would stop. Because they were getting to a point where it was becoming dangerous for the performers.
Right.
That one was a little bit more, look, we can jump from here, and less of a story.
Okay, but I think that may have been geared maybe towards kids or a different audience.
And I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I don't know that sitting through that one in the heat was worth it, but again, get there early or make reservations, because we didn't, and I had to stand the whole time, if I recall.
Okay.
Oh, I eventually sat because they took a break and people left, but... anyway, so overall, the entertainment was pretty solid. I mean,
I do agree.
The trivia was good. It's just they ran into hiccups sometimes, and They weren't the easiest people to understand. They had a lot of
There were a lot
people
of
from
accents,
Brazil and those types of things, and like they didn't know what they were asking, which is fundamentally, I think, kind of like to learn the question. Like, if you don't know what the answer is, then you shouldn't.
Well, and we don't know what preparation had gone into that. You know what their situation
Have
is
an idea.
behind the scenes. But anyway,
So that's kind of entertainment. So I don't know, what are we missing between the last podcast and this one for the ship?
dear goodness, 2 hours. I don't think we missed anything.
Okay, well,
Besides our room attendant's name.
Sani, Sani was his name.
Oh.
It was on the card. I also met him a lot more than you did.
Yeah, you did.
So, okay, so that should roughly sum up everything. And I know it was 2 hours long. We're over 2 podcasts. We appreciate you listening. But hopefully you have a better understanding of the cruise in general and helps you make a decision. If you're looking to book, not book, whether a cruise or this cruise, what are your overall impressions of not just the ship, but the cruise in general?
So I enjoyed it. I am glad we went.
Awkward pause.
But I don't know that I need to do it again. The ship, this itinerary, any of those sorts of things.
Which is kind of our MO. We're not big fans of repeating unless it's just so killer we want to go back.
Right.
We haven't gone back to Alaska on a cruise ship. That was a little expensive too for that reason. But we've seen it. We've done it.
Yeah.
We've got the video evidence of it.
If we're going to go back, we want to do something different.
Right. So I would consider doing Royal again. If it happened to be on Harmony, it happened to be on Harmony. But to me, the itinerary would have to be very different.
Agreed. Yeah.
We like to pick itineraries first and then look at the ship options and the departure ports. So like I would do Eastern Caribbean, so St. Thomas, Jamaica, BVI, all that stuff. I would definitely want to do a med cruise at some point, but there's also some interesting cruise lines out there that would be like Virgin. When the kid thing happened, we immediately were like, maybe we should look at adult-only cruises. And Virgin is a very different kind of a cruise line.
Yes, it is.
But if you are also an adult, it might be worth looking into if you're not if you want to be an adults-only situation. So, all right. Well, that is going to do it for the longest podcast ever. If
Phil
you
and
count
Stacy,
2.
we beat you.
No, we didn't.
Well, the 2 together, right?
If we combine them, but then we're not combining them. They still hold the record for the longest one
Single,
podcast.
yes.
So, thank you guys so much for listening. If you have questions, by all means, reach out to us through one of the options that you have, whether you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week.